Every week, we tell our subscribers about amazing developments, ecological projects of the future, and the latest news from the high-tech world. But how often do we think about the fact that all these innovations and achievements, like humanity as a whole, may not have happened? What if on the road to engineering genius, some scientist made a terrible mistake, the cost of which would be prohibitive for our planet? Nuclear annihilation, radioactive desert, and a new dark age of world history. All this could impact us on October 30th, 1961 during the tests of the most powerful explosive device in the history of mankind, the king of bombs, Tsar Bomba. Welcome to Innovative Tech's channel. Right now, we will tell you about the decision because of which humanity was on the verge of death. To fully comprehend the scale of the catastrophe, one step away from which we were 60 years ago, it is necessary to return to the origin of the creation of nuclear weapons. This race began during the Second World War and reached its climax by the 60s of the last century. The fact is that after the end of the global conflict, the United States seized the leadership in the field of creating weapons of mass destruction. The staggering destruction of Nagasaki and Hiroshima demonstrated to the world the willingness of the American leadership to use nuclear weapons. By the mid-1950s, the Soviet Union was still far behind the United States in this area. Although the first samples of thermonuclear weapons were already at the disposal of the communists, the Soviets experienced a catastrophic shortage of delivery vehicles. Moreover, the USSR had a very limited amount of such ammunition. The Politburo, headed by Khrushchev, did not have the opportunity to deliver a nuclear strike on US territory, and the Soviet leadership was not going to put up with such a situation. It is critical to understand here that the threat of an atomic bombing in those days was more real than ever. Suffice it to recall the sensational conversation between Churchill and Julius Adler, which took place in 1951. The British politician then seriously promoted the idea of nuclear annihilation of the USSR, seeing in this country a threat to the whole world. The United States was also preparing for the inevitable atomic collision. Therefore, the Soviet leadership decided to resort to an ingenious plan based on a nuclear bluff. Engineers were tasked with creating the King of Bombs, the most powerful explosive device in the world, as a display of strength and to convince opponents of the USSR's unlimited nuclear potential. In fact, the Soviet government wanted to demonstrate that in the event of an attack, the communist empire was ready to drag the whole world to hell. The 602 Ivan item. This is the name given to the project to create a thermonuclear weapon with a design capacity of 100 megatons. At that time, it was an outrageous explosive potential, since by 1960 the most explosive weapon was a 15-megaton bomb tested by the United States. The first developments to create a super-powerful nuclear device began in 1956, when Soviet scientists presented their superiors with a preliminary calculation to create a 150-megaton bomb. The document also provided for an increase in the charge power to 1 gigaton, which would have unforeseen consequences. Surprisingly, in February 1961, nuclear engineers sent a letter to the leadership of the USSR, where they seriously raised the question of the advisability of creating a 100-megaton bomb. However, Nikita Khrushchev, the then leader of the Soviet state, had to prove to geopolitical opponents that his country was capable of creating nuclear weapons of unlimited power. Therefore, he insisted on continuing work on the AN-602 and provided all kinds of support to the engineers. After a lengthy analysis, scientists concluded that testing a complete three-stage version of a 100-megaton bomb posed an extreme danger. This was mainly due to radioactive contamination that could have been provoked by the third degree of uranium fission, known as the Jekyll and Hyde reaction. As a result, academician Andrei Sakharov suggested using a two-stage version of the device, and instead of uranium-238, use a nuclear passive material, lead or rather plumbum, so the future bomb acquired a total power of 51 megatons. Its design provided for several innovations at once, including a bi-failure scheme of an implosion of the main thermonuclear unit. In other words, the bomb was detonated from both sides with a difference of 0.1 microseconds. Along with the development of a super-powerful thermonuclear weapon, Soviet aircraft manufacturers were engaged in the creation of a unique Tu-95B aircraft. It served to perform one task only: to deliver the 26.5-ton Ivan to the test site. The bomber existed in a single copy, and this miracle technique dropped the first model of a nuclear bomb in the 1959. After that, the aircraft waited almost 2 years for the AH-602 to be ready to show the world the terrifying power of thermonuclear energy. Let us imagine ourselves in the shoes of scientists studying the explosive potential of nuclear bombs. Realizing that the power of such devices is not limited, experts began to think about the consequences of super-strong explosions. During the first U.S. tests on the Manhattan Project, several scientists performed theoretical calculations and concluded that when a nuclear weapon is detonated, there is a possibility of provoking a self-sustaining chain reaction that will lead to the detonation of the atmosphere and the complete burnout of oxygen. And this with a total capacity of the plutonium weapon of 21 kilotons of TNT. However, after multiple cross-checking of the data, nuclear physicists in 1945 came to the conclusion that the indicated force of an atomic explosion would not be able to trigger an irreversible reaction. Now, let's turn our eyes to a device that is 2.5 thousand times more powerful than the terrible Fat Man dropped on Nagasaki. Upon learning of the development of a 50-megaton bomb, scientists all around the world were horrified, because in this case, the consequences of detonation were impossible to predict. For almost 2 years, the threat of nuclear annihilation hung over our world, and many people built shelters hoping to wait out the end of the world deep underground. Moreover, many realized that in the event of burnout of the atmosphere and oceans, there would be nowhere to come back to, and regardless, they tried to find at least some hope in the face of the coming apocalypse. As if the very existence of an atomic superbomb was not enough, 2 weeks before the tests, Khrushchev plunged the world into panic, announcing the imminent detonation of a thermonuclear weapon that could destroy an entire continent. The situation escalated even more when it became known that even the creators of the King of Bombs themselves were not able to predict how the detonation of such a weapon would end. There are several assumptions that this is why the power of the device has been halved, compared to the design capacity of 100 megatons. Despite the general fears of activists and scientists, on October 30, 1961, the USSR conducted the most terrible test in the history of mankind. The Tu-95B bomber, being at an altitude of 11.5 kilometers, dropped the King of Bombs on the test range number 6, located on the new land, Novaya Zemlya. In 189 seconds at 8:33 UTC, the barometric fuse detonated the weapon at an altitude of 3,700 to 45 meters above sea level. The force of the explosion was terrifying. It exceeded the design capacity of the device by 17%, reaching 58.6 megatons. First, a new sun bloomed in the sky, a fireball with a diameter of 10 kilometers. It literally incinerated everything around it, and even left scorched spots on the specifically protected body of the carrier aircraft, although it was 40 kilometers from the point of detonation. The flash of light could be seen at a distance of over 1,000 kilometers in Norway, Greenland, and Alaska. The formed nuclear mushroom was striking in its proportions, and in just a couple of minutes rose to a height of 67 kilometers. The diameter of the murderous cloud reached 95,000 meters, and the line of sight remained at a distance of 800 kilometers. A 5-magnitude earthquake as well as drops in atmospheric pressure were recorded in New Zealand, and the most remote corners of the Earth. The result of the detonation of a thermonuclear weapon was colossal, as the shockwave circled the planet 3 times and caused unprecedented destruction on the new land. People who had a chance to see the nuclear mushroom live could not believe what was happening and prayed that the consequences of the explosion would not affect them. Even the creators themselves realized at the moment of the explosion that should they have used the maximum power of 100 megatons, then the whole archipelago would simply disappear from the face of the Earth in a split second. In this case, the destruction would be with such great force that the modern world as we are used to seeing it ceased to exist. The radioactive cloud, which is the main source of threat in the 3-stage version of the King of Bombs, would cover half of the planet and could cause the so-called Year of the Nuclear Mushroom, the phenomenon in which the terrifying symbol of the atomic bomb dissipates in the atmosphere over several months. Ironically, the world's most powerful bomb has never actually been a weapon. It was a single experimental product that allowed to achieve a power of 100 megatons of thermonuclear energy. The only purpose, apart from practical tests, was psychological pressure on the United States. Surprisingly, even the presence of a threat of apocalyptic proportions did not compel the Soviet leadership to abandon the terrible tests. The horrific consequences of the explosion of AN-602, however, left an indelible impression on the whole world, including the Soviet and American leadership. The USSR canceled plans to create 150 megaton weapons, and by 1963, an agreement was signed to ban nuclear weapons tests in the atmosphere, outer space, and underwater. For the first time, mankind realized that it could self-destruct with the help of a pair of colossal power bombs. What do you think would be the outcome of testing a thermonuclear weapon for 150 megatons? How disastrous would the consequences be? Please share your opinion in the comments below the video. Do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You're on the Innovative Techs. See you soon. Take care.